So we all know what happened to him. One thing you may not know, and this is one of those, geeky things that I do, that President Kennedy was trying to pass a Executive Order 1110, which basically said that America can print its own money instead of going through the Federal Reserve. He was trying to get it passed through the Executive Order, and 5 months later he was shot. Now, coincidence? Maybe. But I personally believe that is what the New World Order does. If you work against them, if you're actually trying to make a change, you get knocked off. Remember when Ronald Reagan got shot? All of a sudden he changed after that. We thought, well, maybe because he got shot. He got shot with a .22. Now, everybody in here who uses guns knows if you're going to kill somebody, you're not going to use a .22. You're going to use a .45 hollow point or something to blow him up. The .22 just basically injured him, but he recouped. It was a warning shot. Hey, if you don't do what we say, we can pick you off. That's my theory. I also forgot to tell you, anything that I think is my theory, I will say that's what I think. Doesn't mean it's true. He did get shot. He did get shot with a .22. So the rest is my theory.
We can see a new world coming into view.
Talking about the new world.
A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Did you hear what he said? Yeah. Here's Bush talking about how we need a new world order, and when we are successful, and we will be. This is the President of the United States. First, Kennedy warned us about it, right? Now, Bush is saying he wants it, and he wants us to follow what the UN says. I don't know, I got a problem with that.
Win over the long term. It's not just
here's
militarily.
Obama
We've got to win over hearts and minds. And what that means is we've got to invest in countries that have no educational infrastructure, have no means for young people to get ahead. We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
Okay, there's one with Obama talking about it. You'll notice in these videos, whenever they go to say New World Order, they stutter. Like they can't get it out. Like, am I supposed to be saying this? Especially Soros. You'll see that one. Oh, here's another interesting fact about Obama. Did you know that all his college records, all his medical records, his state Senate records, and everything have been sealed, and nobody can access those? We all know about the birther thing and how his birth certificate was sealed for 2 years. You think there's something fishy there? Just me. No. Not him. Okay, this is Gordon Brown. He was the Prime Minister of England, and he's very pro-New World Order. I don't even know what he's talking about here, but he says New World Order.
About the biggest restructuring we have ever seen, not just of the global economy, but of the global order as a whole. And 200 years ago, a famous British Foreign Secretary said that the new world had been called into existence to redress the balance of the old. In 1990, another old world ended, dominated by the Cold War, and people talked then, in 1990, of a new world order. What they actually meant then was a new political order. And what was not foreseen then, but is obvious now from everything that we see and do, what we experience in every day of our life, is the sheer scale and speed and scope of globalization. And it's only now that we can begin to understand that the world order that globalization brings and what it's going to look like, it's driven forward now not just by the balance of military strength, the Cold War times, or ordinary political power. It's being driven forward by a seismic shift in economic power that we see around us. But what does the New World Order mean for countries like ours who are looking to succeed, competitiveness in the process, and realizes what I believe is our destiny of success in this New World Order?
How about that? It's pretty clear. He wants a new world order and he wants England to be part of it. And he was the prime minister, basically like the president of England. Okay, here we have one of my favorites, Henry Kissinger, which used to be Secretary of State. The guy is total New World Order. Watch how he answers this question.
Happened in Asia.
The question I did edit most of it out.
Meaning that
You get the point.
there has been a shift from the west to the east.
There's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world.
He reminds me of Darth Vader, doesn't he? Okay, next one. Is he like real? This is another one where Obama has not been elected yet in this video, so he's talking about President-elect Obama, and listen to what he says.
India, Pakistan, you have jihad. So he can't say it's one brother, it's the most important. But he can give a new impetus to American foreign policy, partly because the reception of them is so extraordinary around the world. I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity, and it's just a crisis.
President-elect Obama.
So he's saying Obama has a great opportunity to bring in the New World Order. But it's not real. Okay, here we have Bill Clinton. Do you have enough? We can skip through this, or are you convinced, or you want to play more? One more? Okay.
In the end of the war, 1989, and the end of the Cold War, we had a worldview. Republican and Democratic presidents alike, from Harry Truman to George Bush, stood for freedom and stood for certain propositions that would make America strong and healthy and grow the middle class and shrink poverty and stand against communism. And after 1989, President Bush said, and it was a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
That I often use myself. We need a new world order. So we got Clinton, Bush, Obama, Kennedy warning us about it. So far. And not to forget Henry Kissinger. And here's my favorite guy, spooky dude, George Soros.
Recapitalize.
Spooky dude is what Glenn Beck calls him.
And then
recapitalize the banks, and then work on a better world order where we work together to resolve problems that confront humanity, like global warming.
What sort of a financial deal should Obama be seeking to strike when he travels to China next month?
No, I think this would be the time, because you really need to bring China into the creation of a new world order, financial world order. They are kind of reluctant members of the IMF. They play along, but they don't make much of a contribution because it's not their institution. Their share is not commensurate. Their voting rights are not commensurate to their weight. So I think you need a new world order that China has to be part of the process of creating it.
So basically he's saying China needs to buy into the New World Order, and they're not doing it. Well, because the New World Order is basically a British thing. It's a Western thing. Russia's not buying into it too well, neither is China, which will be a problem. Now we have the President of the European Union in this video clip, and we have the son of one of the richest men in the world, the Rothschilds, David Rothschild, in this. And they're both talking about world governance, which basically is the same thing as a one world government, which is world governance. So this is the guy, head of the EU,
first year
President of the EU.
Global governance with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis. The climate conference in Copenhagen is another step towards the global management of our planet.
It's past the point of talking. We know historically that the global governance, the sort of agenda to these issues is very hard to try, and with all the best intentions, it's very hard to actually activate.
So there you got 2 more people. Okay, this was the last one for we're gonna play. Well, not the last video of all of them, but this was like 4 weeks ago on MSNBC, and they're talking about a world bank, and they're talking about the banks taking over and running the world. Now, the banks are the new world order. Keep that in mind. And this is on mainstream TV
so
now.
Mostly what they do is hold
summits. What they're saying.
I think that right now the question is, do we all work for central bankers? That's what I want to address to our guest tonight. Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge? Jim Iorio, you say we've got some downside here, a correction in the markets. Fine. But aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do? Aren't we all just counting on the fact that there's a Bernanke put and that we won't go any lower than, say, 5% down from here?
Of course we are, because if we look at the economic data, there's nothing to get excited about in that. So yesterday we saw some reluctance for the Bernanke Fed to expand their balance sheets and pump more money in. But the stock market knows that reluctance is totally different than not willing to do it at all. And that's why we saw oil implode and gold trade off heavily, because they're not a protected class. If the stock market starts trading off in the 10 to 15 to 20% area, the chairman's going to come in and throw some stimulus at it. So to answer your question, we are absolutely slaves to central banks, because and we'd love to be slaves of the economy, but the economic numbers continue to do nothing but trend lower.
Mr. LeCamp, do we work for the central bankers?
We know that.
Mr. LeCamp,
we do. This is free. We do. Look, markets are driven by policy now. They're not driven by market forces. They're driven by fiscal cliffs. They're driven by central bank proclamations. They're driven by false rumors coming out of the ECB.
Fiat currency that's continually watered down. They continue to water our currency down so the markets go up and we feel good about it.
Yeah, and listen to what the Fed did this weekend. I think they really screwed up here. They said that we're going to do this Operation Twist through the end of the year. In other words, they're going to create uncertainty about what happens after Operation Twist, right at the same time that the fiscal cliff kicks in. Do we really want all that uncertainty?
Jim, but we have to give the Fed a break here, because the Fed realizes that what they're doing is probably going to have very little economic effect. The only real thing that can help is fiscal and policy changes. So the Fed, all they have is rocks and stones left. They're just going to throw them. They know that they're probably not going to do any good as well.
Gentlemen, Jim and Jim.
Isn't that why we know that there's going to be QE3? Isn't that why we know there ultimately will be QE3?
That's what I'm banking on.
I love what you said there, Jim LeCamp, about the idea that
ultimately there will be.
Jim LeCamp, which Jim? I'm not sure which one said this, but that we're basically beholden to what the central bankers and policymakers do, rather than to the fundamentals in the economy, because we have not been able to generate real growth without doing one of two things. That is debasing the currency or borrowing our way to a false prosperity. Jim Iorio, how do you invest under those circumstances?
What's the question there, Ty?
How do you invest under those circumstances?
We invest because remember that every central bank in the world, not just us, ultimately has to devalue their currency. So you can't keep, you got to put your money in stuff. Big cap U.S. with good balance sheets, to me, is the world's tallest midget.
Mr. LeCamp, every major country holds gold. That tells me that it's attractive. Is it attractive to you with a watered-down currency?
I think it's very attractive, both as a currency and a store of value. I agree with Jim. Ultimately, you're going to want resources, but volatility is going to stay with us. So I think investors need to get used to trimming what they don't like and having their portfolio on rallies and nibbling at what they do like on sell-offs, because these aren't going away. The only good news here is that free markets will fight back. When we see bond riots in Spain and bond riots in Italy, those are free market forces fighting back, and ultimately they'll win because investors ultimately will walk away.
I think I heard him say he likes gold.
He did say that.
Yes.
I did.
Jim, the two Jims, thank you very much. And John, interesting, I was at a conference this week, and one of the most persuasive investors I talked to there said that he felt that what you have to do right now is buy things that are scarce. He said gold was scarce. Aggregates are scarce.